Namaste. Welcome to another edition of Nava Vimarsh podcast. So we have started a new series called NV Conversations. So as part of the conversations, today we have again invited Mr. Faiyaz Hossain, was born in Bangladesh but now doesn't live in Bangladesh. And we had talked about regarding the recent issues, recent incidents in 2024 August when the Sheikh Hasina regime fell and there was violence, rioting, and a lot of uh, bad activities happening in Bangladesh. And from that onwards, there was a conversation going on regarding the declining secularism, the secular practices in Bangladesh, and how the minorities, especially minorities, Hindus and Buddhists, are affected by this decline in secular principles and secular credentials of Bangladesh. So I thought, okay, let's discuss because a lot of things are not discussed regarding this. And this is something which is because Bangladesh is a neighbor of India, and the people of West Bengal, specifically in Assam, do have a lot of stakes in that place. A lot of Hindus and other minorities live in Bangladesh. So we have invited Fayaz to talk about and give his perspective. So we'll also be giving some data. We have a document prepared which we'll be sharing to complement what Mr. Fayaz will be saying about the historical perspective that was Bangladesh a secular country when it became a secular country, and how on the ground implementation of secular policies and principles have been bit, I would say, not very effective in curbing violence and curbing discriminations against minorities. So, Namaste, Fayaz. How are you?
Namaste. I'm good. Thank you so much, Dada. How are you?
I'm doing good. I will just first, so you can start with your opening statement, and then I'll show the documentation to complement your data and perspectives. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Namaste. My name is Faiyaz. I spent 28 years living in Bangladesh, and I went around all over Bangladesh to see, meet, and find out a lot more than what we are taught. And in that process, I found out a lot of things which I want to share with you. And I'm currently living in Australia. I'm studying here and working as well. So it's part of my process about learning and finding. And I'm also an author and columnist at the Mili Chronicle, and I'm also contributing and writing books as well.
Yeah, thank you, and I think I will also share some articles that you have written on Miri Chronicle. So that I'll also do it later. Let's just I will start with your opening statement that when you were saying that declining or fragile secularism in Bangladesh, what do you mean by the statement? If you could just elaborate so for the audience to understand the statements under this meaning.
Right. By fragile secularism, what I mean is the secularism is there in the constitution, but not in implementation. And also, what is available in the constitution has also contradictory message in other bylaws in the constitution. For example, uh, there is another law that says Islam is the main religion of the state, and even though it was introduced during the rule of military dictators, but when the most secular party available that was in power, Awami League, was there, they could not change it. So what they did was they changed it to Islam is the main religion, but Hindus, Christians, Buddhists, and other religions will have equal status. So that was their level of secularism. But my argument is, even the Awami League did that, and they did a good thing by saying that Islam and other religions will have equal status in the eye of the state. But that is also problematic in the lens of secularism. So if they want to claim Bangladesh is a secular state, it cannot happen like that. That it will have a main religion and other religions will be equal to the main religion. It cannot be like that. When they do it, it becomes flawed. So that's my argument here. The thesis will be that uh, secularism in Bangladesh exists, but in a very weak and fragile decimal. That will be my argument in this entire episode.
Sure. So let me share one document to the audience. Let me, hopefully, people will be able to see the content. So let's go from first. So, so correct. So here we see the following, as we spoke about, following the August 2024 political upheaval in Sheikh Hasina's departure and minority communities face unprecedented threats. Reports indicate over 1,045 documented cases, and there are several which are not documented. It's the violence against minorities in recent period, with systematic targeting of Hindu temples, homes, and businesses. Uh, yeah, so Fayaz, I would like you to just start from the constitution itself so that we can start the conversation.
Okay, right. I would like to start from the British era. So during the
Yeah,
British era, there was no official secularism, but what was there is there was religious tolerance on one side. The British did not usually interfere between Muslims and Hindus, their personal lives or their personal religious affairs. But what they did was they often tried to influence a type of Protestant version of Christianity through missionary works, where they helped people to convert. But it did not create that much of an impact in Bengal. Uh, Normally, most of the people were either Hindus or Muslims, and some of the people converted, but it was not in that massive scale compared to other countries. Like in Australia, a lot of aboriginals they became Christians, but in that case in Bengal, it didn't happen. So after the British left, or even before the left, they introduced some blasphemy laws, and I will talk about it slowly. What happened to those blasphemy laws after the left? So in 1947, there was a partition, and after the partition, East Bengal became East Pakistan. So it became willingly the people of East Pakistan or East Bengal became an Islamic republic. So that is one important point. And after the Islamic Republic was there, uh, they supported Muslim League and Jinnah. So these people were their heroes. So when after that there were some disagreements. There was the language movement and everything, and the 1971 war, and then there was from Muslim League there was Awami Muslim League, and then Awami League, and all those transformations and events led to the 1971 war. So during the 1971 war, there was a Mujibnagar government. I'm sure you remember it, and everyone does. The provisional government which existed with the help of India, and they were a civil administrative government. So when the Mukti Bahini, with the help of Indian armed forces, used to liberate certain land, the Mujibnagar government used to claim those territories as civilian liberated territories, and they used to provide civilian administration over there. A lot of people in Bangladesh will tell you that Mujibnagar government were the first proponents of secularism in Bangladesh. If you read their charter properly, if you read the Declaration of Independence properly, they haven't explicitly used the word secularism. They talked about equality, they talked about justice, but they didn't use the word secularism. And that was one of the fundamental issues over there, because I will slowly discuss what secularism is in reality. So at that time, they didn't, even though they didn't use the word secularism, it was later reinstated into the constitution when Sheikh Mujibur Rahman took over the power. When he came back from Pakistani prison and he came back as a hero in Bangladesh as the independence leader, then he became the president. And then when he ratified his own constitution as the Bangladeshi constitution in 1972, he under the leadership of Dr. Kamal Hussein, they used the word secularism for the first time. And it is widely known in Bangladesh that India or Indian government at that time, they influenced Bangladesh to be a secular country. And that was the beginning of secularism in Bangladesh, using the word secularism. Before that, the Mukti Bahini or the provincial government, Mujibnagar government, they never used the word secularism officially. Unofficially, maybe, but officially it wasn't used. So Sheikh Mujibur Rahman used it in 1972 in the ratifying in the constitution. But there were other laws as well. For example, during British era and in the Pakistani era, there were blasphemy laws. and Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, indoctrinated those laws as well. So on one hand, it claimed to be secular, and on the other hand, it had laws that challenged secularism and that contradicted secularism and said anyone who utters something or hurts religious sentiments would be punished. And then in 1974, there was the Vested Property Act. That was a very controversial law because a lot of people, a lot of Hindus, they were not able to return to Bangladesh at that time, which was formerly East Pakistan, because they had fled violence and persecution. And when someone flees violence and persecution, it's not easy to return. Those people, they have psychological, physical, social trauma. But the Vested Property Act said if some people they leave the country, or they do something mischievous in the land that the government is expelling them, then those people's properties could be used by the government, and they could be used as public properties. And this Vested Property Act led to what is today what we see, is one of the reason why minorities have suffered. Their lands were confiscated. Other people use their lands and are still using their lands and have taken away their lands. We have seen a lot of people in India. They say that they came from East Bengal, but those people, they have left out their lands, their homes. Now their lands are not there as it is waiting for them. Their lands are being confiscated and used by some other people, and that's a problem that I will discuss further. So after that, during 1975, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was assassinated with his family, except two of his daughters who survived. One of them was the next prime minister who became his successor in the Awami League, Sheikh Hasina, and another other one was Sheikh Rehana. And after the assassination, Bangladesh changed slightly, started changing. Uh, the officially there were people like Khandakar Mustaq Ahmed and others who took over power, but eventually the stability officially came when Ziaur Rahman took over the control of the country. Ziaur Rahman came from military throne, but he had a different responsibility. For example, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, when before he died, he made certain secularistic moves as well. For example, what he did was he didn't allow any religious political party to to proactively do politics in Bangladesh. He said no religious political party should exist, and that is why political parties like Jamaat Islami or Hifazat did not exist at that time. So, but Ziaur Rahman, when he came, he wanted to get these people back in politics, so he gave them an easy way in. And that was one of the way that Ziaur Rahman did it. And then there was the Fifth Amendment under General Ziaur Rahman, where secularism was officially removed from the constitution. This is an important part because Ziaur Rahman was one of the sector commanders, or he was the leader of the Z force in the Mukti Bahini. But because a lot of people in Mukti Bahini, they did not understand what secularism is, or they did not propagate secularism even during the 1971 war in the field level, they didn't want it to be constitutionally present. They thought it contradicted with the religion. And General Ziaur Rahman was also a serving major in the Pakistani army, and he fought the 1965 war. So, in that essence, he was a servant of the Islamic Republic. So, obviously, maybe for that reason, he did not like the word secularism, and it contradicted with his consciousness. So after the ratification of the Fifth Amendment, they introduced a unique concept called Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Now, what Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim means is in the name of Allah. Now, my question is, it's a constitution, it's not a prayer book. Why would you write Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim? In a country, people who believe will live, people who disbelieve will live. What's the purpose of using a mantra or a dua here? Like, it doesn't make any sense because people who believe or disbelieve will live here. So what's the point? You should use those kind of sentences that you believe are pure in your prayers or in your daily activities, not in a constitution where all kinds of people should survive. Now, interestingly, General Zia Rahman was killed, attacked and killed, and then there was another military took over by General Ershad. General Ershad was a very religious man, uh, and he did a lot of things. For example, he declared Friday as an official holiday, and then he also introduced Islam as the state religion. Now, before that, even during General Zia's time, Islam was not called officially called a state religion because in the 1971 war, even though they did not claim to be secular, but they did not fight for an Islamic state. They fought for a Bengali state. So a Bengali state and then Islamic state, it becomes very contradictory. But General Ershad was not a freedom fighter. He did not fight in the 1971 war. So since he didn't, and he was made the deputy army chief by General Zia, he took that opportunity and somehow made a military coup after the death, and then he took over power. So he introduced these concepts, and for example, he after declaring the state religion, he changed a lot of things in Bangladesh, and he was known to be very religious, and he used to propagate Islam, praise Islam publicly in his life, even more than Zia Rahman. And General Irshad was known for that. Now, after 1988, slowly there was a democratic transition, and there was the fall of General Irshad, and it was known as the end of military dictatorship and beginning of democratic practices. Now, initially from 1991 to 1996, it was ruled by Bangladesh Nationalist Party (BNP), who is a centrist right-wing leading organization, and they did not bother to care much about secularism. And after that, the Awami League came to rule. Now, when the Awami League came to rule in 2001, they created a vested property return act where they wanted the Hindu population who lost their lands confiscated by a lot of people and especially Muslim people. They wanted them to be returned to them. But unfortunately, those laws had a lot of loopholes, and it was not possible to make a good return. And the Hindus did not benefit much. Some people benefited, but only a minority, fringe minority of Hindus benefited, not most of them. Why they couldn't fix it? Why they couldn't fix the vested property act? Because in 2011 again they corrected the laws. Again they did it. Awami League did it, but still they couldn't fix it because those laws included that places that are used by the public, like government properties that belong to Hindus before, should not be included in the Property Return Act. And there was another problem that I have seen personally. That is, a lot of places that used to be used by the Hindus, after the Hindus left, that was immediately transformed into a mosque or a madrasa. So, because it was transformed into a mosque or a madrasa, it became a place of worship in the name of God. And there is a concept called waqf. You're sure, because in India
Yeah.
there was a huge chaos and debate over waqf before the Operation Sindoor. So, uh, because of that waqf, they were not able to claim those land back, and it would create a lot of communal tensions and problems. So either way, the Hindus, even though they tried, a lot of them applied. But according to Professor Abul Barakat, Dhaka University professor, he said a fringe minority, and a lot of people say maybe even 1% of the people, Hindus, only got their lands. It became to that extent. I'm not exactly sure if it's 1% or 2%, but I'm just saying people say it. So it's a very small chunk of Hindus who were able to get those lands, unfortunately. And in 2005, for example, there was another rule that declared the High Court. High Court declared that the Fifth Amendment by during Ziaur Rahman was declared illegal, but Islam, declared as the state religion, remained, and that was interesting because no one wanted to change it. Neither BNP nor Awami League, they wanted to change it because they thought that if they change it, people will assume that this will lead to people thinking that those political parties or those people have become atheist. They don't believe in Islam, or they don't believe in Allah. They don't believe in Quran. They don't believe in Hadith. They don't believe in Prophet Muhammad. They used to assume like that. Interestingly, I will tell you something. There was a minister, state minister, during the reign of Awami League. His name was Dr. Murad Hassan. I have met him personally once, and I spoke to him about this issue, that why is Islam the state religion still now? And then he said that it's a complex issue and it's hard to remove and all. And then I spoke to him and told him that how can a country have a religion? If a country can have a religion, then a building can have a religion, then a forest can have a religion, then a village can have a religion. I asked him this question. I said that people can have religion, or a country can implement religion, but a country cannot have religion. Religious laws can be implemented by a country. Like in Afghanistan, the Taliban are implementing Islam. Now, there we can say it's an Islamic nation. But Bangladesh, they have banks, they have brothels, they have all un-Islamic activities going on. But why do they have to use Islam as their state religion? I explained it to him. I don't know, even though it was a personal conversation, I don't know if he will still remember me or not. But he suddenly came up from the Awami League and he stood up and he said that we want 1972 constitution back, we don't want a state religion. And when journalists asked him why not, and he said the same argument I gave him, that uh, a building cannot have a religion, a village cannot have a religion, then how come a country? If a country can have a religion, then can the world have a religion? So majority of the people in the world are Christians. So will we say the world is Christian? No, we will say the world is for everyone. Similarly, a country is for everyone. Yes, the laws can be governed by from a religious scripture or from ethics from religious scripture, but that doesn't make a country Muslim or Hindu. That was my argument that I told Dr. Murad Hassan, and he propagated that. But unfortunately, for that reason or for other reason, he or for some other comments that he made, he lost his seat as as a cabinet member. He lost his position as a minister. And in 2024, when there was an election, he was not given nomination. For that reason, or maybe some other added reasons as well. And Awami League's Joint Secretary Bahauddin Nasim was asked, and he said that no, we have no plans to change Islam as the official religion. We don't have the plans to ratify or nullify it. We want to, because we already corrected it, and we said other religions like Hinduism, Christianity, they will have equal status. So during the Awami League rule, there was an interesting event. It was called the Shahbag Gono Jagaran Moncho. It was a reunification of secular bloggers where they demanded the war criminal trial. During the trial, a lot of them had an atheistic philosophical mindset. And this was a problem because other Islamist groups took advantage of it and said that Awami League is supporting and propagating atheism. So then Awami League had to ratify and promote blasphemy laws as well. So we will now go to the demographics. For example, in the current religious demographic of Bangladesh, so the Muslim population is estimated to be around 90 to 91%. Hindus are 8%. Buddhists and others are 1%. Now, my question to everyone is, what about the atheists? What about the agnostics? Where are they? Where is the counting? They don't exist? Of course they exist. Because no one really estimates them, calculates them, or gives them any value in Bangladesh. No political party, even Awami League, the most secular party. That's why my title was Fragile Secularism. Because as a country, you are supposed to recognize everyone. You are supposed to talk about the rights of everyone. But unfortunately, they don't. So Bangladesh could be considered a Muslim dominated, philosophically Muslim dominated secularism, but such a thing does not exist or cannot exist. So that's the problem. That's why I called it a fragile secularism. Even during all types of leadership, from military rule to democracy to Sheikh Hasina, all types of rules that we had, there was no exact perfect transition towards secularism. Even during the interim period that we are seeing now, same thing, or even worse than Sheikh Hasina. Now it's even worse. At that time, there was some accountability. She used to value some Hindus to go higher up in positions. She used to give, for example, in 2011, she did the Vested Property Return Act, and some Hindus benefited. Maybe a small chunk, but they did. But now it's even worse. Now, the violence against minorities, you have to understand, when the secular concept in Bangladesh had faced a lot of drawbacks and criticism because of the nature it was involved within. Initially, the secular concept, or how the Awami League came from Awami Muslim League, was because of the Hindus. Because the Awami League leadership, they saw that Hindus are part of their movement. Hindus are part of the 1971 Liberation War. Hindus are part of 1969 movement, on all other movements that happened in East Pakistan. So why will we name it Awami Muslim League? Because it's a mixture of Muslims and Hindus. So then they thought that this should be named as Awami League. Interestingly, that motive has not done enough good for being secular, because the concept of secularism is a religion will not interfere in state activities. Unfortunately, in Bangladeshi context, it did. For example, even though Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, he banned political parties, which is very, very positive, I would say, in that context, especially after some of those parties, what they did in 1971 as war criminals. But after that, what he did was he himself banned selling production of alcohol. He himself banned gambling. However, he allowed the Tablighi Jamaat Ijtema to be done in Tongi, in near Dhaka, an area. So you would see a mixed baggage and package of picking and choosing, which does not evaluate a transitional, meaningful dialogue full of secularism, which was absent. And there is one interesting thing that I would tell you. That is there is a special marriage act. This act existed before Bangladesh existed, and that marriage act says if people from two communities, like a Hindu wants to marry a Christian, or a Muslim wants to marry a Hindu, or a Christian wants to marry a Muslim, or an atheist wants to marry a Muslim, then what they need to do is both of them have to leave their religion and then they get married. Now, this is the Special Marriage Act. It still exists today. And these kind of laws are not existing in any secular, liberal, and advanced progressive society. Even in the West, it's impossible for this kind of laws to exist. Because if people from different religions, they want to get married, because marriage is a personal decision at the end. Maybe parents can tell them, don't do that, and that's fine. Parents, friends, society can interfere to a certain level. But if the constitution tells them that to get married, you have to leave your religion publicly. And what happens if you leave your religion? If for example, I claim to live the religion of my forefathers, then what happens is I will not be able to inherit any property. And then what will happen is my property will be taken by the government or will be taken by my sibling. And I will be on the same situation like like the refugees who went to India are suffering, you know. So the Special Marriage Act, which is there, is a big catch, and it leads to a lot of loopholes and troubles, and it is very much anti-secular. And there was a lot of communal tensions, and it did not exist only after 1971 or 1990s or 1980s or now. The mob violences, they existed from 1940s, unfortunately. And those mob violators, they're the predecessors of people like Titumir, they're predecessors of the Farazi movement, and they learned from there. And even today, a lot of them, they use the slogans like Inkilab Zindabad. The same slogans used by the Farazi movement and other people during the British rule. Same slogans used to attack the Hindu king. And so some of the events are highlighted here. For example, the 1992 Babri Masjid aftermath. Bangladesh witnessed widespread communal riots. Now, Babri Masjid was a masjid formed by Babur. He was a dictator, a ruler uh, in another part of India, of course. But this has nothing to do with Bangladesh or Bangladeshi Hindus. Yeah. Now, for example, if there was a Hindu country, say in Atlantic Ocean, and they broke some mosque, you will see some people in Bangladesh will do mob violence citing that. That's the problem. So let's say Mauritius is a Hindu country or Indonesia. So if they do any kind of violence there, Bangladesh will have retrospective violence over there. They will have a counter violence, and they often call it kisas in the Shari terminology. That if you harm us, we will harm you equally. But what do you mean? Like Babri Masjid is India's personal issue. India has a Supreme Court. India has their rules and regulations, and from there, India can have their own dialogues and progress it if they want to decide to break it or make it. And if India wants, they can make 10 Babri Masjid. It's India's matter. Why will you? Why will you harm them here in Bangladesh? And that's not only in the case of Babri Masjid. Anything. If the Waqf protest would go on 2 3 weeks, you will see violence in Bangladesh would follow up easily. Now, after the 2001 election, the BNP government that came back to power for the second time, but in the second time, I don't know why, when they came back to power, they were much more brutal against Hindus. They attacked Hindus a lot more. They were a lot more communal. There were circumstantial evidences that the BNP had a lot of ties with uh, Islamic radicals and terrorists and activists. And even at that time, there were Al Qaeda affiliates. They tried to, they tried to rule some parts of Bangladesh. They were known as the Jamaatul Mujahideen Bangladesh. In 2013, there was the Hifazat movement, and they wanted a lot of reforms, pro-Islamic reforms, and that led them to have clashes with Army League, and the minorities here also suffered and got attacked. And then in 2021, there was Kumilla incident due to blasphemy, allegations of blasphemy that certain Hindus uh, they desecrated the Quran and stuff, but they were not proven. There was no proof, but they still attacked and harmed them. And the same thing in Ramu and other places. The mobs, the violence, and everything. It resulted from disinformation and misinformation propagated by people who wanted to take advantage. Now, unfortunately, the problem was Awami League was in power at that time, but this couldn't be stopped, or there was no justice available during that time that was done openly, so that people would cherish those justice systems, and they would reflect that because of this case and justice, we wouldn't be able to do this kind of attacks or violence again. There was no such measure taken at that time, unfortunately, and that's one of the saddest part because most of the Hindus in Bangladesh they used to support the Awami League, and if in Awami League era some violence occurs, it is really the last resort for many Hindus because uh, ultimately what I think is even now after the 5th of August or before, the students and many people in Bangladesh they claim to be Rajakars, war criminals, and they used a slogan that they were beating some of the people from Awami League, and they were asking them, "Are you Rajakar or are you Bengali?" Meaning either you are Bengali or either you are Rajakar. So the term Bengali are not used by a lot of Bangladeshis anymore. They use the word Bangladeshi. Yeah. So Hindus are one of the few people who use the word Bengali till now, and Awami League uses the word Bengali, of course. So uh, But still, even during the time of the pro-Bengali nationalist government of Awami League, the Hindus were suffered, and they did not get proper acquainted justice either with the vested uh, property return act or through managing the communal tensions. It was not done that effectively as it should have been, but comparatively, they were still better than other governments to an extent. Now, after 2024, the situation has gone a lot worse. Now, what are the key factors that result or that contribute to this kind of violences? One of them is madrasa education, of course. Now, the madrasa education is very isolated, and it's a very different from mainstream education. Now, the thing with madrasa education is they don't integrate with majority of the people of the society. They don't talk to them that much because they study separated. Now, because they study in a isolated environment, what they do is initially they start with memorizing the Quran. After that, they spend a lot of time. After memorizing, they slowly start learning philosophy, theology, and other things. Now, this process where you start by memorizing and then you go into other subjects makes people becoming a memorizing ant. They don't want to learn and use their minds. They want to learn by memorizing. So they don't want to be research oriented learners. They want to be uh, learners like a parrot. So this what happens is this is a very easy way to radicalize them, because whatever their scholar will say, whatever their leader will say, they will have to memorize it and implement it, because that's what they were habituated from a small age. And with the interpretations available in Islamic theological contexts, it was easy for them to be motivated and radicalized. And we had seen the extent to which madrasa students played a huge role in the 5th of August, or before that, in the student protest, in the July protest, where madrasa students played a leading role and character. But madrasa students are not the sole, they're not the monopoly in here. There are other factors as well. There are political parties like the BNP and Jamaat who are not always affiliated to madrasa. Some of them are, but most of them are not. They provide a lot of rhetoric that are blasphemous, that insults the Hindu gods and communities, and they are making fun of them as well. But the Hindus are not able to respond to them, because if the Hindus respond to them, then the blasphemy laws will be used on the Hindus only. And even before the blasphemy laws will be used, there will be communal riots. Just like there were communal riots in Ramu, there were communal riots in Kumilla and other places. The problem was there were disinformation, there was no proof. So imagine if a Hindu would talk openly and they would criticize the government, or not the government, the religion openly, or they would reply to the attacks. Because when you attack someone, they would defend, and the one way of being defensive logically is attacking the other, attacking the other's ideas and philosophy. That is a normal way of debating. It's not possible in Bangladeshi context, because of the blasphemy laws. Now, the blasphemy laws existed; they still exist, and even during the Awami League rule, they indoctrinated blasphemy laws and ratified it. Then they had the Digital Security Act and the Cyber Security Act, where they focused on not hurting religious sentiments. But this mostly goes in favor of Muslims, because if you insult or say anything critical of Prophet Muhammad, or even in research context, like people like Taslima Nasreen, who were academic who wrote academic books. Books can be good or bad. That's a different thing. But even while writing books, you're not able to express your freedom. Uh, but you can have freedom to praise Islam. You can have freedom to praise Prophet Muhammad, but you don't have the freedom to be a critic of it in Bangladesh. That's a problem. That's a problem where it cannot be called as a proper secular state. And that's why the Hindus could never debate or return back. So I have seen some people's doing dawah. They were going to the Hindus and propagating to convert to Islam. Now the Hindus used to stay silent, because if they say something negative about Islamic theology, they will be in trouble. Their house can be desecrated, vandalized, arsoned, or even they could be killed, or they could go to prison. But a Muslim who would propagate the religion, he would get, oh my God, you are preaching Islam, wow. So it's really a great blessing. It's really, you're doing the work of the Prophet. So they would be they would be clapped and applauded publicly, and people would most of the people would support them. However, there are some people who would say, who are secular, and they would say, leave them alone, they're minorities, let them do what they want. That's an issue, because if you want both ways, if you want the Hindus to respond, then you have to remove the blasphemy laws and say the Hindus have equal right to respond, and then Hindus can debate, or they can argue, or they can present facts from their scriptures and counter your scriptures, or your fallacies or arguments or logics. But they're not able to, unfortunately. Um, so I will now discuss about that. There is a concept called terrorism in Bangladesh. So the concept of terrorism has not been something new. It's been quite old, because there was the Afghan jihad, where a lot of mujahideen from the madrasa, they participated, and then they went to the jihad, and then they returned after the war was completed. With the help of America, they fought against Soviet Union, and then they learned a lot of things from there. They they got enriched with the knowledge of jihad, and then they came back, and then they were able to radicalize a lot of people. And those people opened a lot more madrasa, and the concept of opening madrasa, running madrasa started from there. So after the Afghan jihad, the number of madrasas, the number of people who would get to know about jihad became a lot more. And initially, Bangladesh, most of the people in Bangladesh, they were following the Hanafi madhab, and they were Sufis or Brelvis. Uh, there is a scholar in India, Ahmed Raza Khan Brelvi. He's from the town of Brelvi. Initially, people were his followers, but the Diobandis, or the Qaumi people, they pray in the same way that those people pray, but their belief and interpretations are very different. Now, Diobandis are the followers of Rashid Ahmed Gangohi, Ashraf Ali Thanvi. They're from the Darul Uloom Dioband. They had great relationship with Indira Gandhi. Indira Gandhi went there on their 100th celebration inside the madrasa itself. So those same people, like Bangladeshi people, without even knowing what is Diobandi or Brelvi, they converted to Diobandi. Now, Diobandis are a bit more radical compared to Belvis, and they are similar to the Saudi Wahhabis. Saudi Wahhabis had a major impact, especially among the youth, where Saudis invested a lot of money to open madrasas. They funded TV channels. For example, the Peace TV, who operated in Bangladesh by Zakir Naik, he was one of the reason as well that the Hindus got verbally attacked, and people started thinking that their religion was the only supreme religion, because Zakir Naik used to show that he debated Sri Ravi Shankar, and then people used to clap and then support him, and he acted like he won the debates, you know. So they used to translate and transliterate it in Bengali language, and then people used to be like, "Wow, he's a champion. No one can, intellectually defeat a Muslim." Uh, so they would say bravo to Zakir Naik, and they would feel a sense of supremacism. And this many people wanted to be Zakir Naik themselves. They copied Zakir Naik, tried to quote the scriptures, learned from his recordings, and they would go to other Hindus living in nearby and tell them, "Why don't you convert? Our religion is true. Prophet Muhammad is the Kalki avatar," and stuff like that. So they would propagate it, and then this started, unfortunately, from there. And I have seen a lot of it personally from my surroundings. So the Saudi Wahhabis, they created an impactful participation there. But I want to mention one thing, that all Saudi Wahhabis or Salafis are not like that, because there are some of them who are loyal to the Saudi embassy. They don't do these things. They don't go to any Hindus or talk to them even. They are busy with their own thing. Now, Saudi government, they have changed, and with that change, they don't want to uh, directly, be involved in minority activities or influence them to convert. So Saudis, I have changed that, and I want to acknowledge that and thank them for their for their transition towards a lot more liberal values under the leadership of Muhammad bin Salman. Now, with the digital radicalization, there was the unfortunate Holy Edison attack. There was the Jamaatul Mujahideen Bangladesh. And unfortunately, they are also Wahhabis, but they are not Saudi Wahhabis. There are many kinds of Wahhabis as well. Just like there were many kinds of Sunnis, there are many kinds of Wahhabis. Now, some Wahhabis, they don't follow the Saudi king. They want to have their own caliphate, like Al Qaeda or ISIS. They want to have their own empire. So these people, they have the local affiliates like JMP, Ansar al Islam, and one of them who got released by Dr. Yunus is Mufti Jashimuddin Rahmani. So these people, they always spread a lot of anti-secular propaganda, and they say someone who is secular is a kafir, is a disbeliever. And these people, online and offline, they propagate a lot of things. Now, yes, Saudi Arabia before 1980s, 1990s, or even before 2000, a lot of them were like that as well. They used to say the same thing. But fortunately, they have changed, and that led to certain people of section from the who were followers of the Saudi Wahhabi doctrine to neutralize silently, certainly. So, for example, there was Salman F. Rahman, an advisor of Sheikh Hasina. He was a Saudi Wahhabi, but he was not a radical because he got neutralized, of course, and he's a businessman, and he was an advisor there, and he was never speaking radically, but he was one of their followers, and he had good relationship with Saudi government. So after that, this radicalization still continues, and it's still part of the society. And there are Shias and Qadianis in Bangladesh as well, but they have very limited rights. They cannot propagate because one of the foundational principles of Shia Islam is that they criticize the Sahaba, they criticize the wives of the Prophet. So because they criticize them, it would be considered blasphemy. So they are not able to propagate it openly. And the Qadianis believe that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani is one of their last, someone similar to a prophet, but not exactly a prophet. So, but the Sunnis don't accept him as the prophet or something, or anyone. The Sunnis, they think he's an imposter. So, because of that, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani and his followers have always suffered persecution and attacks. And so did the Sufi Mazar, because, as I said, people knowingly or unknowingly shifted from the Mazar following Brelvis to Diobandis, the Qawmis, and Hifazat. So they started hating Mazar, and they shifted towards Tabligh, they shifted towards Hifazat, they shifted towards political Islam instead of being with the Sufis. So knowingly or unwillingly, they changed because those people, they pray in the same way, so they thought maybe that Islam and that Islam is same. But once they were influenced, it was too late for them to realize that they have already changed without knowing. And I know a lot of people, their ancestors were Sufis, but now they are establishing Qawmi Madrasa because without even knowing, they realized, they felt like that is correct and that is wrong. So, of course, there are global recognitions and reports about all these that have happened. It's not that just that we are saying it from the sky, and I have seen a bit from reality, but it's all reported and documented. Unfortunately, not a lot of Bangladeshis know about them. So, as I spoke about the 103 Ahmadi homes, businesses, Hindu homes, Hindu statues being desecrated, damaged, persecuted, it was documented by the US State Department. Now, I'll tell you, the European Parliament, the Amnesty International, the Vatican News, all of them show traces of these incidents, but these are very much unreported and fragmented pieces. They only portray a partial reality of the exact event. I know one Hindu boy personally from Borishal. I knew him for a long time. We used to do social work together when I was there. He participated in the July protest against Sheikh Hasina, and he wanted the Sheikh Hasina government to fall. But immediately after the incident, his neighboring houses were burned, desecrated, vandalized, and statues as well. And then he came up on social media and said that uh, people are saying Bangladesh is liberated for the second time, but Hindus can never be liberated. And so I recently spoke to him for an article that what happened, and then he said that the amount of violence that happened, they are not really uh, taken properly by the people because the media has been censored. They're not able to propagate the message clearly, and also BBC, the renowned network, they sent Sahar Zand, a British journalist, and she even propagated in her documentary that the persecution level that is available on media is very less. So most of the cases have been unreported. I wrote an article on this on theorganizer.org uh, about the unreported minority persecution in Bangladesh. And I also said the same thing, that it's whatever data we have, it's only a fragmented part. It could be 10, 20, 30%, who knows? And unfortunately, the researchers who go to Bangladesh, they will only go to Dhaka. They will only go to five-star hotels. They will meet a few people there, or maybe one or two suburban districts near Dhaka. But they will not go to the border areas that are of high risk zones like Satkira, like Joshua, like Ramu, like Noakhali, and others that have traditionally suffered violence and intimidation for decades. And as DNI Tulsi Gabbard from the US State Department stated, that it's a long standing crisis for Bangladesh. It's a long standing human rights persecution. And this long standing persecution happened because there was no proper secularism, because you are not giving proper rights to minorities. You're not giving proper rights to Hindus, Christians, Buddhists, to atheists, to agnostics. You're not giving proper rights to Shias. You're not giving proper rights to Qadianis. Now forget about Hindu and Muslim equal rights. A Shia and Sunni does not have equal rights in Bangladesh. Hindus are very less compared to Muslims, but Shias don't have equal rights. Qadianis don't have equal rights. Now, even the Sufis, the Bauls, the people who sing Qawwali, the followers of Lalon, they don't have equal rights. So how will Hindus have equal rights? It's a very far-fetched thinking that to have equal rights. So yeah, some of them can pretend to be equal, some of them can pretend to have a good life because of some personal interest or pressure from pressure groups or from pressure from governments or enforcement agencies. But it's very difficult. Without proper democratic stabilization, without proper democratic transition, it's not possible. And in interim government, they're saying they want to reform, but they're reforming nothing. When it comes to secularism, they're reforming nothing. They have zero interest. A lot of people thought that Dr. Yunus is a secular individual. He would make secular reforms, but nothing. He is a friend to the Islamists. He is there with the help and authority of the Islamists, with the support of Islamists. And Islamists say that he is ordained from God. So it's never possible for him to do anything positive. And even if there is an election, for example, now Awami League is totally sidelined from politics. They have been temporarily banned without a referendum by Yunus. Now, what happens is there will be an election, and either BNP or Jamaat will come, and then they will make it more dangerous for Bangladesh. So the fragile secularism will get more and more cornered in Bangladesh. And there might be a time where they may even remove the word, or even if they don't remove it, there will be no implementation of the word. It will be a symbolic secularism. Secularism will exist like the Queen of England. It will be there, but it will not have any work. So that's one of the now. What do I recommend? It's true that these problems have existed. Now, if Bangladesh really wants to be secular, there needs to have a constituent assembly, or there needs to have a parliamentary session where they need to have open dialogues about it. They need to uphold the democratic framework where secular values need to exist. For example, they need to say that Bangladesh is a Bengali nation, or Bangladesh is a mixed nation, or a pluralistic nation, you know, and then Bangladesh will uphold all religious and non religious values in the same light. Someone who believes and someone who disbelieves will have the same citizenship rights in the society. If, for example, Bangladeshi writer Taslima Nasreen, she could not live in Bangladesh, but she is living in India. Why? Because India has certain values. Of course, India also falls under pressure when during Waqf bill and other problems, the Muslims they come to the streets and they vandalize and attack and target. That's they put pressure, and then this kind of pressure really impacts the secular framework of India, or they create political tensions in India for no reason. When these issues could be solved by dialogues, but the people they want to come to the streets, and some people they benefit. They say, "Come to the street, we will see," and stuff. But this is not a solution. Coming to the street, the solution is having meaningful dialogues. The solution is to have constitutional reforms. The solution is to think first. What do we want? Do we want a Muslim dominated philosophical, Sunni philosophical Deobandi version of state, or do we want a state for all? I think everyone wants a Qawmi version of state, a state where the teachings of Deobandi ulama will have priority. That's the state I think what they want. Because if they didn't want it, they could have had a certain amount of framework. Now, um, the Deobandis are having good fundings, local and international, from all political parties. And after receiving the funding, a lot of people knowingly and unknowingly, as I said, are converting. So because of that, they will have an upper influence in the society, and they will have more and more influence as of coming years. So unless Bangladeshi people want to embrace secularism, it will not be embraced with just mentioning it in the constitution. And there could be diplomatic pressures. There could international community might pressurize, but I'm not really hopeful because what the interim government has done since August 5th, there has not been enough pressure. There has not been enough problems for them. The international community have advocated sometimes, but they have really turned a blind eye. As the UK journalist Sahar Zan said, the world has ignored the Hindu persecution in Bangladesh, the minority persecution in Bangladesh. If the world is ignoring this, um, then it's really a big problem. So all these issues have contributed to a lot of unnecessary violence, propagated a lot of unnecessary tensions. But the solution really only lies in a secular transition. Now that's what majority of the people in Bangladesh are unfortunately right now they're not interested in. And unless they're interested in that, it's not possible. Uh, that's what I feel. And even though the 1972 Constitution it may have criticism. The 1974 Constitution and the Vested Act may have criticism, but what we're seeing today, they were much better than what Bangladesh is there today. Even at that time, people like Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, they at least thought that we need to integrate Hindus into our society. We need to, we need to give them equal status. And then he even said one time in a dialogue that this Bengal is not for Hindus or Muslims. This Bengal is for Bengalis. This Bengal is for people who cry for the nation. At least he used to say this kind of words to unite people, regardless of their religious belief or something. So now there is no leadership like that. Even verbally, they will not be able to say it. Verbally, they will mock Hinduism. Verbally, they will say these things and that things. Only Hindus that are loyal to their personal political party, they will be nice to them. So this is the pick and choose game that has been going on. And with this kind of framework, unfortunately, anything is possible, but secularism will be weak and weaker, and they will exist as a symbol, like a pin drop and nothing else. So, of course, we would like to request urgent call to action. As DNI Tulsi Gabbard stated and others stated, of course, from the international community, the Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and others have stated over and over again, um, there needs to be good ways to declare pluralistic framework, and of course, the minorities need to be protected. UN has a lot to do, but unfortunately, the UN is only busy with Rohingyas. They are not interested in other segments of the society, and they're turning a blind eye. And I feel very sad when people like Volker Turk, the UN Human Rights Commissioner, is not has not said has not said enough about the, or even had said nothing compared to what is expected from him about the minority violence in Bangladesh since August 5th. He's the human rights commissioner. He should be more careful about these issues. If he wants, he can go visit the Hindus, and uh, he could have said this is disinformation, this is true, and we have to face these issues. You have to correct these issues. You have to be more secular and liberal. And Bangladeshi secularism contradicts the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But unfortunately, people like Volker Turk, they have no problem with Afghanistan, they have no problem with Saudi, they have no problem with Qatar, they have no problem with any other country, and so they will not have problems with Bangladesh, unfortunately. So that's the problem. UN needs to play a big role in countries like Bangladesh that is struggling with democracy and secularism. UN needs to play a big role. I always said it when I was in Bangladesh that if Bangladesh can have a good democratic transition and they can have secularism in the transition, then they will become like India. But if Bangladesh has a electoral democratic transition but not a secular transition, then they will become like Pakistan. That is the reality. Today, they're going back to the East Pakistan. If you read the reports today about Bangladesh and if you read the history of the 1940s, you will see there are a lot of similar in patterns. So this is the problem. The UN has not done enough. The international organizations have not done enough, and Bangladesh was not able to learn why they should implement secularism. They were always thinking about their selfishness. The selfishness of the majority is not democracy, is not secularism, and that is Bangladesh, unfortunately. So, thank you.
Thank you, Fayaz. It was really heartening to know that you have done a lot of research. You are working on that, and you have shared so much knowledge, understanding of the local issues, your personal experiences, which you have gathered while living in Bangladesh. Now you live outside Bangladesh, so you can speak more freely about it and educate us, okay, inform us more about what's happening because we live from far-flung places, and due to barriers of language, culture, understanding, it's difficult sometimes to actually for people who are from different cultures, different geographies to understand what's happening in Bangladesh and what can be done about it. So really, thank you. I have one or two questions, so I'll ask those, and then we have some audience questions. We'll also take them as well.
Sure.
My first question is that when we are defining secularism, okay, in the nation-state perspective, correct? So secularism as a concept was derived when in the West, church had a lot of powers and which was misused. Okay, and from the misused power of church and the Catholic Church specifically, okay, or church in general, which actually created a lot of problems for the normal people and also for the governments. So, with that historical perspective, secularism was introduced to actually limit the power of the church, or if I say Abrahamic faith in nature.
Yeah.
So now, considering that secularism is kind of a Western concept, okay, how do we implement secularism in the Indian subcontinent, which had its own frameworks, legal frameworks? We have a 5,000-year-old history of living together. Okay, where in if you see the Indian subcontinent, including modern day Bhutan, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, even Afghanistan, and greater areas. Okay, so we had Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism, even other philosophies which actually coexisted. Okay, so what do you think? Does secularism needs to be implemented in the subcontinent in a modified manner, or we should import this as it is as a Western concept itself?
Yeah, of course, it's a Western concept, but unfortunately or fortunately, it was introduced into the Constitution, and that's why we're talking about it. But apart from
Hmm.
that, if you want to see from the traditional perspective,
Hmm.
in the Indian subcontinent or in Bharat, that we
Hmm.
say that
Hmm.
uh, we had our own culture, we had our own roots, and it was secular without calling secular, because the Hindu Dharma by itself is secular. For example, the Hindu Dharma allowed people to live Hindu Dharma without being punished. Hindu Dharma accepted people from all sorts of backgrounds and uh, people from different faiths. So it said that people who will leave Vedic principles is a grave sin, but it did not have a blasphemy perspective like they will be murdered or they will be killed, not in the scriptures. So the tolerance and pluralism was always there in the Hindu scriptures, even thousands of years ago. And that's why you have people like Charvak
Yes.
philosophers.
Hmm.
They existed, and many people consider them a school of Hindu philosophy. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I will just give you one input to make it a little bit more clear.
Yeah,
So, Charvak, so correct. So you had the Vedic Shastra, Vedic Dharma. Okay.
yeah,
So in Sanatan Dharma or Hinduism, so you have Astikas and Nastikas. Okay.
yeah.
People who believe in Vedas as the source of knowledge. Okay. They are called Astikas. People who do not believe in Vedas as a primary source of divinity, they would be called Nastikas.
Mm,
Okay. And then you also have a Ishwarvadi, Nirishwarvadi. Okay.
mm,
People who believe in like formless God, and people who believe in Murti Puja. Okay.
mm,
Where you worship idols. Okay. So some people would believe in Vedas, but they would not believe in idol worship. Okay.
mm,
So there are different. So what I why I ask this question, because in terms of secular principles which were implemented and invented, okay, in Western civilization, okay, that was a kind of a if I say correctly, it was a kind of a response, okay, a response movement to uh, religious dogma, okay, and bit of persecution from the church itself, which actually gave birth to secular principles. So you did not have the correct kind of plural values which Hindus or Sanatani philosophies had. So
mm,
we didn't had to invent secularism to
mm.
survive
Yes,
the Western things had. That's why I ask this question, that with modern nation state concept, uh, as a secular principle values, correct? As Indians, okay, as a Bharatiya, okay, as a person from a Bharatiya civilization heritage, we can actually incorporate a lot of secular values which are there in Western civilization, in Western countries, okay, and model them so that it because as you mentioned, correct, that the principle of individual having a faith, but the state not having a faith. Okay, because in ancient times, the king would have to give justice to everybody who uh, uh, came to his court for justice. He could not say, okay, because you don't believe in Vedas, so I will not give you
exactly.
justice.
Yeah.
So state by nature was itself secular in ancient India 1,000 years ago.
Yes, yes. No doubt.
Correct.
No
Correct.
doubt.
So in that context, what I because it's because correct, we have a habit of like copy and pasting. So
Yeah.
there has to be a nuance in discussion, that if a religious practice is not trampling upon any other citizens' right to do what they want or follow their own traditions, correct, they can carry on and they would not be anti-secular in nature.
No.
Correct. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to actually highlight it. So that rather than like wholesale copy pasting the secular principles, because the Western civilization, correct, they are a kind of a like a homogeneous society. The French people speak French. They have a similar kind of culture. But in Indian subcontinent, every region is a kind of a nation state itself with their own individual uh, practices, food habits, their culture. So, in this a very heterogeneous society, maybe we have to rethink in terms of how we implement secular principles by like copying, okay, or importing good part of it and incorporating with our own principles to make it a harmonious thing. What do you think?
Absolutely. In context of India, it's like that. But in context
Hmm,
of Bangladesh, you have to do the opposite because you have to then copy paste from the West because Bangladesh is an Abrahamic religiously dominated society. So
exactly.
just how the British they indoctrinated themselves or the unindoctrinated themselves from the church and the biblical laws,
Hmm, hmm,
or the Jews have done it to an extent. They
hmm,
need to do the similar phase which Saudi Arabia is going through. Now, since Bangladesh wants to go back to that Abrahamic phase or the prophetic phase, they need to re-evaluate and they need to find a new way how they can separate themselves from the state and from the Quranic laws and stuff. And for that, the only way for them is secular because they will not accept Sanatan philosophy.
hmm.
If you say accept Sanatan philosophy, they will say, "Oh my goodness, you are an agent of India." Yeah, that's the problem. So the only way forward for them is accepting secularism, and that's what I said. If they accept secularism and democratic transition properly, then they can be like India, somewhat similar to India. But if they don't accept it properly, they will be like Pakistan, and that's the unfortunate way they have been heading. That's the problem. So for Bangladesh, the limitations are less because they don't have they have Sanatan culture only in terms of like wedding, only in terms of food, but in terms of acceptability, in terms of tolerance, in terms of gaining knowledge and debating and philosophical discourses, they don't have that. Unfortunately, I don't know why, but in East Bengal, these things are less. They have more tactics of memorization. They have more tactics of building something by copying, but they don't have something. They don't have something for them to analyze into a rational discourse, and that impacted secularism, unfortunately.
Thank you. I'll ask my last question, and then we'll take one or two questions from the audience itself. So now you see the because you know the country from inside because you have lived there. You have lived in the society where you were born. Okay. How do you think uh, right now with the kind of government we have? We don't have actually government in now. It's a I don't know. There is no legal framework to name the government which is running now. It's kind of
Yeah.
run by advisors. I don't know what we call it. Nor is a theocracy, nor is a military rule, nor is a democracy. You don't know how do you define the government now. But still, whatever governing dispensation that we have right now in Bangladesh, and the way things are moving, where the notes are being changed, the currency notes, and there was also call to actually change the constitution itself. Okay, so from a fragile secularism, are we seeing the erasure of whatever remaining secular principles which were there uh, in constitution to are in grave danger right now, grave danger from fragile to grave danger in terms of its secular principles and policies on constitution in constitution.
Yeah, of course. The degradation is there. It's going on, and that's what I said. It's going on the path towards becoming another Pakistan. Now, Pakistan internationally, when they go, they will also tell you that they have minority rights and everything. When they go to the UN, they will say the same thing. Bangladesh is doing the same thing. When Muhammad Yunus will go abroad, he will act like there is no problem in Bangladesh. Yeah. So this is the nature of things. They don't want to take responsibility of what is happening. They want to deny it. This denying culture among the politicians and among the civil societies or among the people have been a lot of stress, has given a lot of stress for Bangladesh. And so what was remaining in secularism is also under threat right now. That's the conclusion.
Yes. Thank you. I think I am done with my questions. I will take now one or two questions from the audience. But do you think can we have this discussion in Bangla as well? Because that might benefit bit more people who speak Bengali and who are closely related to that. Let's
Yes, of
discuss this.
course. We can do it in Bangla as well, no problem.
Yeah, we'll try to have one more session this in Bangla. So we'll discuss few more points. Not exactly the same, but there's a lot to talk about anyway. So
Yeah,
let's
we
take a
can do
few.
one thing. We can do one
Hmm.
thing. We can discuss this, and we can also discuss how Hinduism by itself is secular.
Yeah, yeah, correct.
Even
Exactly, exactly,
even without using the word secular, how Hinduism itself is secular, and why. If someone is Sanatani, they don't really need to implement British secularism. We can talk about this later.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll talk about that. We'll do a Bengali episode
Yeah,
that
yeah.
will be a bit helpful for people. So we have a question from Retrowave Universe. Ask Fayaz, how do you respond to the argument that Islamic extremism in Bangladesh isn't just a fringe problem, but a foundational issue, one that has enabled slow killing of Hindus since 1947. So I think he's talking about the ideological framework of the Abrahamic faith, which actually creates the foundational for this discrimination and atrocities to continue over the 4, 5, or maybe 10 generations.
Of course, it's 100% ideological. Uh, Muslims and Hindus, they almost have the same DNA. You cannot even know. For example, if we take away a Muslim baby and a Hindu baby and someone steals it and mixes it up, you will not know which is it, which. We will say these are Bengali babies. So that's the problem. The entire thing is ideological. It has nothing to do with any other issue. From ideology, it leads to communal. As I said before, I spoke to in another episode that I quoted
Hmm.
some hadith and I quoted some quotes from Quran as well. That why they do it. There are hadiths from Khalid bin Walid breaking idols like Allah, Uzzat, Mana, Dil Khalasa, famous temples in during the time of Prophet in Abrahamic Peninsula, in Arabian Peninsula. So these are foundational issues that Muslim League they grasped it. Jinnah was clever enough to take advantage, and he wanted his own country. And then other people or poor people, they had faith. They became Tawhidi Janata, and then they aligned with that, and then they did what they did.
Got it. Got it. I think there are two more questions, but they are not very relevant to what we are talking about. So we'll skip them. And before we leave our session, let me just share two things. So people who are listening to this, people who want to understand set of like how Bangladesh is, to understand Bangladesh society, its politics, its people, its history. So people should read these two books. One book is by Mr. Deep Haldar and Mr. Abhishek Vishwas. The book is called Being Hindu in Bangladesh. So people who are interested, who are listening to this conversation, you can go ahead and buy this book. This book is available. You can see the book here also. I have kept it here. So this book is available in English, also in Bengali, whichever language you prefer. You can use this as a reference guide, addition to what we have talked about, what we have shown in the documentation and what Fayaz has said. And one more very interesting book, more relevant to our discussion, is regarding this book by Mr. Kushi Gangopadhyay and Devrato. The book's name is The Joy Bangla Deception, Bangladesh Islamism under the facade of Bengali nationalism. This is also talks about, discusses about a lot of points that we have covered in terms of the secular versus non-secular principles and policies within the institutions, the contradictory policies which they had. So it was like a dichotomy within the policies and dichotomy within the constitution in terms of one is opposing the other. Like Bangladesh is a secular state, but a secular state has a religion, a state religion called Islam. So they are contradictory in each other. So those things and many things are discussed in the book called Joy Bangla Deception. Both the links for the book and buying link is also there in the chat and also there in the description. So people who want to understand and learn more about it, you can go ahead and buy the book itself. So thank you, Fayaz, for your time. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Just Yeah, stay there for 2 3 minutes. We will discuss one more thing. As of now, thank you for your efforts. Thank you for coming to our podcast and sharing the details. It was really wonderful talking to you. See you next time. Jai Shri Ram, Vande Mataram.